President Trump has warned the US economy could decelerate if interest rates aren't lowered soon. Reiterating his criticism of the Fed Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, Trump claims that current decreasing costs signal little inflation risk, but a slowdown could occur without immediate rate cuts. His comments, which come amid mounting pressure on Powell, have led to a decline in stock markets and an increase in bond yields as investors consider the implications of a potential conflict over Fed policy. For more, let's head to the States. We're joined by Oz Sultan from Sultan Interactive Group. Great to see you. What is the issue that President Trump has with Jerome Powell?
So it's multifold. The first comes that Powell couldn't cut interest rates quick enough in the face of the economy that Biden had left Trump at the end of his term. The second issue that we're running into, too, is that, the Fed has kind of stood a little bit too far alone from the monetary policy that the president is trying to drive forward. Trump is saying that Powell can't be kicked out quickly enough. The way that we have to look at this in terms of what's going on with tariffs and rates, and really kind of the long-term look at both bonds and our dollar vis-a-vis the BRICS and other moves that are being made internationally on trade, is that we want strength, we want stability, and we want growth. And I think that the challenge that Trump sees with Powell being a little bit more independent from that philosophy is that we're not going to get there quick enough, and that Powell could be a stumbling block on the road to get there.
Let's have a look at, one of the posts on Truth Social that President Trump put up. He says, just what I predicted they would do. There can almost be no inflation, but there can be slowing of the economy unless Mr. Too Late, a major loser, lowers interest rates now. Obviously, many investors aren't so sure what that means. What's the concern about there being a disparity between Trump and the Fed chair?
So really what Trump is looking at, if we can reduce rates, we can increase lending. If we increase lending, we open the doors to multifold growth inside of the economy, whether that's purchases and housing starts, whether that is money that can be lent out to mid-tier market companies, or whether that's refinancing that can happen in the near term for both companies, individuals, and homeowners. That slowness that the Fed is moving with really pushes things out almost a quarter every single time that there's delays inside of this process. And if there's not operations in concert in between what the White House wants to drive as far as policy and what the Fed is doing, you're going to get these sort of lumpy, I don't know any other way to put it, but you're going to get these lumpy market signals that are, they'll drive to short-term inflation. They could drive to multi-week periodic stagflation. But what they're going to do is they're going to hold back the process. And what President Trump is really driving towards is an overarching process here, which challenges the BRICS, which pushes to stabilize the dollar inside of, the oil fights that we're having with China and Russia. And at the same point in time, pushes our bond yields higher. So I think that these capitulations by Powell would be great, but if he doesn't capitulate, I think he's looking to be replaced.
Yeah, talk to us about that process.
So typically, there's a, if Powell had resigned, it'd be very easy for him to be replaced. Trump would just appoint someone that would go through the federal approval process. There would be hearings inside of Congress and go easy. In this case, what we're looking at is the removal of Powell. And that process can be a little bit more labyrinthical. It may in part have to go through justice. It may in part have to go through Congress. Trump may be able to put an executive order, but Fed chairs don't get removed all that often. And Fed chairs typically can sit there through multiple presidencies, as we've seen with Greenspan in the past. So that process of itself will kind of elucidate itself to the American people over the course of, I think, the next couple of months. But Trump's big push is going to be to get someone in there who is more aligned with what the White House is doing and more aligned with the policies that are really about reshaping not just how we process revenue, but also how we process financial policy as a country.
Yeah, well, let's talk about what's happening on the trade front because we know JD Vance has just arrived in India. Tensions with India, just like tensions with many other countries, there's hope for some sort of trade agreement. What would India be wanting to get out of a relationship, a better relationship with the United States and vice versa?
India's got three levers that they want to just sort of shake here. One is military and military goods. So they have been purchasing military goods from Russia and from America for a long period of time. And they're one of the few fighting forces out there that has sort of a hybridized military force in between our weaponry and Russian weaponry. The second is oil and coal, right? So India is in need of a tremendous amount of low sulfur coal right now for the expansion of steel plants and for the infrastructure builds that they have planned inside of the next portion of this decade. So there's arguments going on right now with the BRICS because India has been moving to pay in either their own currency, the yuan or ruble reserves, which really kind of takes America out of that argument. And then the third aspect of this, and I think this is a hedge right now, is that Trump has said that he is willing to make America a junior member of the Commonwealth, which Australia is a Commonwealth country. What that would do is that would basically stabilize the dollar against the BRICS and break the BRICS in half by basically saying, for many of the BRIC countries that are Commonwealth countries, maybe you have to continue in dollar trade for now, and that this hybridization of creating your own currency is not on the it's not in the cards for at least the next couple of years.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating one, isn't it? India's relationship with the Commonwealth and countries like Australia and the United States, but they still buy those military assets from Russia. They're still
Yep.
the eye in BRICS. And many say the reason why they do buy those military assets from Russia is because it's a third of the cost as to what the US military assets would be. But as India, of course, starts to increase the amount of money that comes through its coffers through taxation and exports, maybe that will change, but it will be an interesting one to see. All right, let's move on. Pope Francis, the first Latin American pope, has passed away at the age of 88. His pontificate marked by efforts to reform the Roman Catholic Church amid significant challenges and divisions. We're joined by Oz Sultan, of course, from Sultan Interactive Group. How do you think he'll be remembered?
First of all, on behalf of I'd say the American Muslim Ummah, we want to extend our prayers and our thoughts to the Catholic diaspora out there at the passing of the Pope. In terms of how Pope Francis will be remembered, I think it's going to be mixed. He has challenged a lot of conservative orthodoxy out there in terms of what the structures of boundaries are and what borders should be. He did push in many ways to be more Christ-like, but I think that the challenges that you have is that when any very powerful religious figure gets into the issue of geopolitics, there tends to be some challenges. He did raise a number of international questions on the wars in Ukraine and the war that is ongoing in Gaza, as well as focuses that need to be made on human rights and the preservation of human rights inside of these wars. But I think that his legacy is going to be a little mixed, especially with some of the papal edicts that came towards the end of his term, including a more recent, it wasn't a papal bull, but it was a papal edict stipulating that they were open to accepting homosexuals inside of clergy. So I think what will happen next is a very big question, not just from the Council of Cardinals that have to elect a new pope, but also the potential for new papal bulls being put out. And that's, kind of their regulatory frameworks of how the Catholic Church operates and how you should be interpreting religion. And the last time that happened, I believe, was under Urban II, and that was in the 1960s.
It is an incredible show. I was at the Vatican back in 2005 when Pope John Paul II passed away, and I think it was about 4 million Catholics headed to the Vatican and to Rome. It was just the most incredible experience. We've heard from the White House, President Trump will attend Pope Francis's funeral.
That he will. We know that he'll be there later this week on Friday. I anticipate that J.D. Vance, as a devout Catholic, may also be there, as well as heads of states of most of your Western powers and some of your Eastern powers. It'll be interesting to see, how Russia plays into this, but maybe we are coming to a larger state of detente in these last days of Pope Francis and what is now shaping up to be a completely brand new era for Catholicism in the 21st century.
Absolutely. We will be following it, of course. Oz Sultan, appreciate your insights as always right here on Ticker. Thanks.
Thank you.